Hi everybody, welcome back to a new tutorial. In this tutorial I'll be showing you how to sew the fitted trouser I drafted previously. If you've not seen that video, I'll leave the link in the description box. So in this video I'll be showing you how to attach a side pocket and also a waistband. Please, if you want to learn how to do that, subscribe and watch till the end. Make sure you like this video as well. Okay, so for the pocket, I'll place 3 inches from the side seam, and I'll mark 3 inches including the seam allowance for the side and half-inch seam allowance. So altogether, if you take half-inch for the side and half-inch for the pocket facing, you have 2 inches. Now for the pocket bag, I'll extend my tape to where the dart leg stop, and I'm going to mark that down. And after that will be for the pocket bag, and from there I'm going to take my tape and also mark 1 inch before my crotch line, and that will be for the crotch, that will be for the pocket bag extension. I'll go ahead and draw a straight line from that waistline and also connect it to the side seam. Now after that, next I'm going to go over to my pocket bag and do the shape. You know that shape that you usually see on the side of your pocket, so I'm going to go and do that shape. So for you to determine that, what you need to know is to know the length that you need to take at the side. So measure what your hands can go through. Make sure that the space that you leave there, your hands can go through it. So from the waistline, I'll take 6.5, including half an inch on the waist of my pattern, and I'm going to just go ahead and draw a curved line touching that 3 inches that I marked earlier on the waist. So you see, we've gradually just created the side pocket for this pattern. Next up, after that, I'm just going to go ahead and add the half an inch seam allowance that I took earlier on and reconnect it back to the side. After that, I'm going to move over to the pocket bag. I will use my pattern master to just give it a nice curve at the sides, you know that curve that you see on pockets inside. So I'll just go ahead and create that. So after that, I'll take a clean sheet of paper and place it on my pattern and trace off the pattern. So first off, I'm going to trace the pocket facing and also trace out the pocket bag. I'll trace off with the seam allowances. The only side that doesn't have a seam allowance is the side of the pocket bag. So after tracing it off, I'll also go ahead and add half an inch seam allowance all around it for the pocket facing and the pocket bag. So I've gone ahead to do that, and next up I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. So you can either decide to cut this out on after tracing out the pattern. You can place the pocket facing underneath your pattern and cut it out together, or you can cut it out separately. It will still be fine as long as the shape correspond with each other and they match each other. So I've gone ahead to cut out my pocket bag and my pocket facing. I'll also indicate what is the pocket and what is the pocket facing. I'm also gonna ahead to indicate that when you're cutting this on your fabric, you're cutting 2 pieces for each of them. And also I went ahead to also indicate where my lined seam allowances will fall at the side. So basically we are done with that. Now moving forward to the waistband. For the waistband, what you need to do, like I said, I took out 1.5 inch for my band, and I added half inch for the waistline on the front panel. So what I'll do is to fold in my dart. I'll fold in my dart, and then I'll take my pattern paper and trace off the edge of my waistline. So I'll trace off the waistline for the front and trace off the waistline for the back. Now after tracing it off, I'm going to place my tape on that line that I traced off and then mark 1.5 inch upward for the band. After marking 1.5 inch for the band, I'm going to add seam allowances. I also made sure that I traced off the fly extension. Remember, we have a zipper extension for the front panel, so I also went ahead to trace that off, and I will be cutting out the pattern. Now do take note that for the back panel, you can decide to cut it on fold, but for the sake of this video, I'll be cutting it separately. I'm going to be attaching it separately, so I'll be having 2 backs and 2 fronts. So after that, we are going to move over to the sewing properly. So now that I've cut out the band, this is what it looked like when placed together. So I will move over to the sewing. Now for the sewing, I've gone ahead to place my piece on my main fabric, the fabric that I'll be using for this tutorial. I placed all of my piece on the fabric, and I cut out 2 pieces for each of the piece that I have. I cut out 2 pieces for the main, for the front panel, and 2 pieces for the back panel. I cut out 2 pieces for the band as well, for the main, and one for the main fabric and one to use as facing. And also I went ahead to cut out 2 pieces for the pocket and 2 pieces for the pocket bag. Now moving forward, after cutting out all of this, I also went ahead to iron an interfacing on my pocket, on my band. On my band, I ironed an interfacing on it just so that it gives it some stability. Now moving forward, I'll go ahead on my pattern to mark notches on the dart legs of the back and the front, and also at the ankle and the knee line, just so that when you're about to attach the front and the back together, the notches would guide you on where to place together. So I've gone ahead to do that. I placed notches also at the seam allowance section of my zipper fly, just so that I know where to take my seam allowance, the stitch from at that extension. Now moving forward, I will go ahead and sew from my waistline up until my crotch line for the front. So I'll place the fronts together, right sides facing each other, and I'll run a loose stitch from the top of the waistline up until where I get to under the zipper fly, and then from that under I'm going to run a straight stitch. I'm going to run a tight stitch on that, and I'm also going to iron an interfacing on my zipper extension on the zipper fly. Now that is done, you can see that the crotch area is closed and the zipper fly extension is open. Now moving forward, after ironing the interfacing on my fly, I'm going to go ahead and just fold over one side of the fly. Alright, so that done. Next up, because I folded in one side of my fly, I'm going to turn my fabric to the other side just to show you the effect of that fold. So now you can see I folded in and I turned the fabric to the right side, and you see that I already have an extension, and I also have that midline also showing at my fabric. So if I open it up, you see I still have that line, that crease line on my fabric. Next up, I'm going to place my zipper on that folded edge, and I'm going to sew a straight stitch from the edge, from the beginning of the waistline up until where the fly extension stop at the crotch line. So what you need to do is make sure that your zipper is slightly a little bit covering one part of the zipper, just so that when you sew it down, it has some kind of coverage, like the one side, the zipper is actually being covered. So I'll just pin down that part and I'll run down a stitch on that. So now that I've done that, this is what it looks like. I already have a closure. The zip is already concealed inside. Next up, after that, I'll turn my fabric to the wrong side, and we are going to be attaching the other side of the zipper to the other side of the fly. Now, after turning my fabric to the wrong side, I will grab one side of the fly extension and one side of the zipper that is not attached to my fabric, and I'm going to pin it down. After pinning it down, I'm going to go ahead and attach the two of them together with a straight stitch. Mind you that you're only attaching the zipper and the zipper fly, you're not attaching it with your main pattern. Okay, so don't make that mistake of going to sew down the zipper and the fly and your main pattern at the same time. No, you're only going to be attaching your zipper and your fly, the fly extension that was not attached, the other one that is not folded. Mind you, I folded just one part, so the other part that is not folded, you grab it with the zipper. You can decide to pin it down, take it to the sewing machine and run a stitch all the way down. Now I have done that. I've run a stitch on it and I've taken out the pins, and this is it. This is what it's looking like. After that, I'm going to turn it to the right side so that you can see the effects of all of that I've done. So you can see that I have an overlap, and my zipper is nicely concealed inside, I've gone ahead to open up the zipper, and you see that the zipper is concealed inside, everything is tucked in inside, and it's looking very nice and clean. Now moving forward, after that, I'm going to go and run a stitch on the right side of my front panel. So on the side where we just attached the zipper, I'm going to run a curved line. You know that curved line you see on zippers, on trousers, on the where the zipper sits. So I'm going to go ahead and run a line there, just so as to attach the fly and the shield together. So I've gone and do that, and this is what it is. The zipper opens nicely and it's nicely concealed inside. Now moving forward, on the right side, on the wrong side as well, I've gone ahead to mark my darts. Now because we took 1.5 inch from the waistline, and you know some of the darts are going to go off, so what you need to do is to extend your dart legs as well. So I've done that for the front and the back. I extended the dart legs by 4 inch for the front and 5 inch for the darts for the back. And next up, I'm going to sew my darts. Make sure that you're sewing your dart from the wrong side of your fabric, not on the right side. So if you're going to be taking your dart, you're taking it from the wrong side of the fabric, not from the right side. Now moving forward, after sewing in my darts, and our trouser is gradually coming on small. Next up, I'm going to move over to the pockets. So for the pockets, I'm going to place the pocket bag on the right side of my front pattern, and I'm going to pin it down. So you place right side of the pocket bag on the right side of your front panel, so right sides facing each other at either sides of the pocket. You pin it down, take it to your sewing machine, and you run a stitch on that curve. You can see that the curve aligns together. You take it there, you run a stitch, and then you take out your pins. Now after that, I will also recommend that you go ahead and cut tiny cuts on that curved edges, just so that it helps the pocket to sit nicely inside the trouser. Now after that, next up, you can see what it looks like. The trouser, the pocket facing is attached, and I've gone ahead to cut tiny snips around the curved edges of this pocket. Moving forward, after that, I'm going to take to my sewing machine, and I'm going to run a top stitch on the pocket bag, on the pocket facing, just so that it also sits nicely and the pocket doesn't pop out of the trouser when you're done making your trouser. So I've run a top stitch, and the pockets bag, the pocket facing is sitting relaxed inside the pockets, inside the trouser. Next up, after that, we are going to be attaching the pocket bag to the pant. And in order to do that, you grab your pocket bag and you place each one on each side of the pocket to make sure that all the edges align with each other. For the pocket facing and the pocket bag, the edges align with each other. You can decide to pin this down, take it to your sewing machine, and run a stitch from one corner of the pocket to the other corner of the pocket. And also, I recommend that you also hold it down at the sides and also at the edge of the waistline where the pocket is. Also run a stitch there, just to hold the pocket down as well. Now I've done that. I've sewed in my pocket bag to my pockets, not sewing it to the main pattern. Remember, you're only sewing the pocket bag and the pocket facing together. I've attached it to the main trouser at the sides and at the waistline. Now this is what it looks like. The pocket is sitting nicely inside the trouser. You can put your hands inside and see that the pocket is perfectly okay looking inside and relaxed inside. Now moving forward, after that, next thing I'm going to be doing is to take the back panel and place it on the right panel, right sides facing each other, pin the both of them together, and take it to the sewing machine and sew it down. Now what you need to do, place the right side of the front and the right side of the back, right sides facing each other, pin it. Make sure that you match all your notches. They are all matched together at the side seam, at the end seam. Pin all the way from down to the crotch and to the other side of the trouser leg, and then you take it to your sewing machine and run a straight stitch from one side of the trouser to the other side of the trouser. And also at the crotch line, make sure that the crotch for the front and the crotch at the back, you also match the side seam just so that they align together, and you go ahead and sew it down. After that, this is what it is. And next up, we're going to be fixing the band. I've gone ahead to sew my band together. I've sewn the back and the front together. You can see the band. I've also gone ahead to iron it as well. So for me to place the band, I'm going to place it front. I'm going to first off pin down the side seams. Remember that the band has cuts by the side, so I'm going to make sure that I match the side seams of the back and the side seam of the front together. Make sure that you match all of the sides, the back side seam, the front side seam, and then you sew it at the front. After sewing it at the front of your pattern of your fabric, then you turn the band inside and then sew it down. So for you to do this, so that none of your stitches will be showing at the front of your trouser, you are going to be doing what we call a stitch in the ditch. By the time you fold in your band inward, you take it to your sewing machine and sew it from the front. Now when you're sewing it, you're pulling your band just so that you're sewing in between the line, and you're grabbing the band at the inside, at the wrong side of your trouser. I hope you understand that. And next up, for the front, you can just go ahead and close it off with the 1/2 inch seam allowance we added at the pattern, and we are good to go. All right, so now I have gone ahead, I've done all of that. I've fixed my band and I've fixed everything. This is what it looks like. I've done the stitch in the ditch. You can see that the pants is looking very neat and clean. You cannot see any stitch on the band. Yeah, that is what we call a stitch in the ditch. Now for the extension in front, you can go ahead and add either a hook and eye, or you can add a buttonhole and a button to it. And moving forward, next up, I'm going to just go ahead and hem the bottom part of this pants by 2 inches. Make sure that you use the 2 inches you left for the seam allowance for the ankle, and then we're going to hem it, and our trouser is all done. So I'm going to go and try out this pattern, this fabric, this pants that I made, and I'm going to show you what it looks like. If you're going to be recreating your own, please do let me know in the comment section. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you like. If you do, please give me a thumbs up. I'll see you in my next video. Bye, and remain positive.